Hey everybody, it's Greg again. It's another edition of Unbreakable podcast. And it's Thursday, October the 3rd. And this is our weekly TV classic show of the week. Now, this show was is an iconic show from the 50s and early 60s. And I am going to sing you the theme song. There are no words, but here we go. You'll do this. You'll do this. Ready? Here we go. I can't go so worth a damn. Yes, it's a leave it to Beaver. Leave it to Beaver. Huh? Leave it to Beaver. All right, here we go. Leave it to Beaver is not caught show. It Beaver. I hate to say it. I'm going to tell you how Beaver got his name. Uh, Beaver ran from 1957 to 1963, 6 seasons. For some reason, I'm thinking Leave It to Beaver was on like this long time, 10, 12 years. So Beaver was like this guy living in his mom's basement. No, it was 6 seasons. It was, and I don't really remember growing up as a kid. You know what I remember? Leave It to Beaver watching the reruns. And that's how it became famous, which we're going to talk about. But in those 6 seasons, get it, a total of 234 episodes. A lot of adventures of Beaver. You know what it is. It's about this suburban family with these two kids, teenage kid named Wally, little kid named Beaver, a grade school kid. And it's about the misadventures of Beaver. What kind of trouble he gets into, what kind of trouble he gets out of. It's just a nice, wholesome, clean family type of show. And it was really funny. The really early episodes where Beaver is like a little kid, those are good. The older ones where Beaver is more of a teenager, not so much. Not so much. Anyway, it actually started, Leave It to Beaver actually started with CBS for one season, the 57-58 season. It was canceled, and guess what? ABC picked it up, and it ran for another 5 years, from 58 to 63. And Leave It to Beaver never had a consistent day or time slot. It was on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. They couldn't find, it was one of those shows that they couldn't find a consistent day or a consistent time slot to make it work. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a minute. That show that song that I just whistled, that actually has a name. That is called the Toy Parade. The Toy Parade. And Leave It to Beaver, we think of this iconic show, right? Now we think iconic. Wow, that's a taste of Americana in the 50s and 60s, right? But it never cracked the top 30 when it was out those 6 seasons. So people were like, yeah, Beaver this, Beaver that, other shows were popular. Father Knows Best, Ozzie and Harriet, I Love Lucy, a lot of those old shows like that. Just stepped right on the beef. But like I said, Leave It to Beaver really came into its own and became the iconic show that it is to us through reruns. Syndication, reruns really did. Not only was it replayed on the networks after it was canceled, especially in the mornings. But TBS really made it popular. They started showing Leave It to Beaver like during the day in the 80s, you know? And that's when people started picking up on Leave It to Beaver and said, hey, you know what? This isn't a bad little show here. Well, and of course, Jerry Mathers, who's still alive, played the Beaver. And his real name, well, on the show was Theodore Cleaver. Theodore. He was nicknamed the Beaver. Here's how the Beaver got his name. One of the writers, whose name was Ed Cotter, had a shipmate in World War II on a submarine. The shipmate's nickname was the Beaver. And so when the writer started putting this show together, he said, hey, I had a friend named the Beaver. Let's call it the Beaver. So actually, they added the last name Cleaver later on. They had the Beaver first. Beaver, Cleaver, Beaver, Cleaver. And of course, Beaver had a lot of friends. Shit. Here's some of them. And we'll talk a little bit about them. Larry Bondello. He was the guy, the kid, kind of chunky kid, who was always munching on an apple time. He always had a baseball cap on like the Beaver did. Or like I had all the time. Gilbert Tate was another friend of the Beavers. Gus the fireman was an older fellow than the Beavers. And then Beaver had different teachers during the Revolution. Miss Canfield. There was a show about Miss Canfield where Beaver had a crush on his teacher. That was Miss Canfield. Miss Landers, and then the principal of Beaver's school, her name was Mrs. Rayburn. And Beaver's nemesis in school was this girl. The Beaver always hated girls. Don't tell little boys were. I don't know if they still are. Little boys were back in the day. Ew, girls are icky. Ew, ew. Well, Beaver's nemesis, her name was Judy Hensley. Judy Hensley. Wally, you know, Wally was played by Tony Dow. And in actuality, on the show, when Leave It to Beaver first started, the mythical ages of the boys, there are only two, where Wally was 12 and Beaver was 7. 5 years apart. But in real life, Tony Dow and Jerry Mathers were only 3 years apart. Which is kind of strange because I always think of Tony Dow as being this teenager guy. He always wore the leather jacket, and playing football, a real jock. Whereas the Beaver is this little pipsqueak down kind of kid, But in reality, they were 3 years apart. Who knew? And that was Wally. That's the way they played Wally. Wally lettered in 3 different sports. He always had girlfriends. So 2 of his girlfriends on the show were named Mary Ellen Rogers and Julie Foster. Like I said, the Beaver not so much. This was a typical. I got these. This, if you've ever seen Leave It to Beaver before, this was some typical scenes in Leave It to Beaver. Okay, so it was a very, very simple show. It was a very innocent, honest, nice show. So you'd have the Beaver, like, gee, Wally, I see you have another girlfriend. Well, sure, Beav. I mean, when you get older, you'll have girlfriends too. Well, Wally, don't say that. Walk. And then it would dissolve into another scene, right? Oh, gee, Wally, what? You've got a crummy sweater on today. Well, I was playing football. just didn't feel like changing. Oh, okay. What, and it would dissolve. It seems like that. But mostly they talk about girls doing how Beaver just didn't like she. Well, gee, Molly, I got in trouble at school tonight. Don't tell mom and dad. What happened, Beaver? Well, I put a frog down Judy Hensler's shirt. Beaver, we're going to get in trouble. What? And dissolve. So that was kind of Leave It to Beaver. Yeah, that was there. Hey, when we were starved for entertainment back then, give me so, we thought it was good. We thought it was good. All right, some of Wally's pets. We talked about Beaver's pet. Wally's pets, and they were like teenagers too. There was Clarence Rutherford, his name was Lumpy. Lumpy. You can just picture this guy. Lumpy. Lumpy, without even seeing it. Then there was, of course, my favorite, Eddie Haskell, who was played by the great Ken Osmond. No relation to the Osmond brothers. Eddie Haskell was one of my favorite characters of all time. Right up there with Ed Norton. And Eddie Haskell was, how can I describe him? He was this smug, two-faced, arrogant kid. He would be like, all right, I'll give you a seat of Eddie Haskell. Here you go. Like Mrs. Cleaver, is in the house there. You're like, gee, Wally, your Wally's really not with it. Your parents are really square. And then Mrs. Cleaver would enter the room with her pearls on and her flowing dress. Well, good afternoon, Mrs. Cleaver, Eddie Haskell. You look divine today. He would play up to the parents. He would be this two-faced guy. And then when she left the room, he would stick her out. Your mom's really square, Wally. That's the way. So, but I love Eddie Haskell, who we're going to talk about here in a minute here. The town they all lived in was called Mayfield. Mayfield. No state was ever designated, but it was a small town. It could have been anywhere, right? Could have been Pennsylvania, as far as I'm concerned. Could have been anywhere. The Beaver went to the Grant Avenue Grammar School. That was the name of the school. And June, the mother, of course, was played by the great Barbara Billingsley. Now, you know Barbara Billingsley. Other than Leave It to Beaver, she was the lady who taught jive in the movie Airplane. Remember Airplane? She was on the plane and she was talking jive to these other guys there. That's Barbara Billingsley. And there was a reason why she always wore that necklace. If she's dusting in the house, or she's putting a turkey in the oven, or she's like sitting there eating chocolates or watching her soap operas, and she's wearing this necklace. And you're thinking, wow, she's kind of good. But why she wore the necklace? Because Barbara Billingsley had a surgical scar on her neck. That's why she wore the necklace. And she always wore high heels too. And I thought, wow, Mrs. Cleaver is wearing high heels and she's vacuuming the floor. What the hell? But she always wore high heels because the boys, this was planned, the boys were every season of Leave It to Beaver, they were getting taller and taller and taller. It was a planned thing that she would wear high heels to make it seem like she was taller than the kids. I'm just saying. And of course, Ward Cleaver was played by Hugh Beaumont. Now we know Hugh Beaumont, other than Ward, that was really his claim to fame, was actually a villain in quite a few TV series and movies prior to Leave It to Beaver. And he directed a couple episodes of Leave It to Beaver. including the finale. The very last show of Leave It to Beaver was sort of a retrospective show of the whole series. And Hugh Beaumont directed that. Now, Hugh Beaumont seemed like he was always home. You know, even this was way before people started working at home. You know, but he always had the sweater on and the briefcase. It turned out he was an accountant. He was an accountant. That was his big job, if you want to call it that. How did Jerry Adams get the role to be? Well, there were a lot of kids up for the role of movie. And they made the roll call, what they call the cattle call out in Hollywood. So every stage mother would push their kid in, you know how it is. And say, oh, my kid could be the leader. But Jimmy Adams came in, and he seemed distracted for some reason. And the producers said, Jerry, what's wrong? You seem distracted. And he was honest. He said, I'd rather be at the Cub Scouts right now. I have a Cub Scout meeting right after this audition. And the producers found him very likable, very honest, and very sincere. That's what they wanted to hear. And they hired Jerry Bowers to be the Beaver. And then right after that, he went to his Cub Scout meeting. So there you go. Some other people you probably know from the series. Richard Deacon, and this tall guy with the bald head, he played in the Dick Van Dyke Show. He was the assistant for Rob Petrie, Dick Van Dyke, his boss, right? Is Mel Brooks and the other guy, Carl Reiner. That's who I was trying to think of, Carl Reiner. Mel Coley, that was the character's name. Richard Deacon played him. And Richard Deacon, we were first introduced to Richard Deacon in the Leave It to Beaver because he played Fred Rutherford, who was Lumpy Rutherford's father, who actually worked with Ward in the accounting firm. Some other friends of Beavers who we got to know through the years. Lady Whitney, who was actually a kid named Lady, and Buddy Hart, who sounds like this wrestler, doesn't he? And in this corner, Buddy Hart, and in this corner, you're Hulk Hogan, Buddy Hart. In the pilot for Leave It to Beaver, there were actually two different people playing Ward and Wally. And I guess they couldn't cut it, so they got rid of them, and they settled on Tony Dow and Hugh Bullock. Now, each season, the sixth season of Leave It to Beaver, there was always an opening title card, they call it. Like, Leave It to Beaver, starting the Beaver. Well, in season, they were all different. In season one, the title card was just a slab of wet cement. Well, they really spent no expense there, did they? A slab of wet cement with the scrolling on it, like Beaver actually dug his fingers in there and did it. Leave It to Beaver. Season two, the title card was, well, they showed Ward and Jude, the parents, at the bottom of the steps, giving lunches to Beaver and Wally as they came down the steps in the morning. That was the start of the show. Like it really wanted you to watch, you know? And season three, the title card was Jude and Ward burst into the boys' bedroom. You know, the boys had the same bedroom. Beaver, if you remember, Beaver had the bunk beds. They had the bunk beds, and then they went to separate beds. And so the parents burst in, and there you got the Beaver and Wally's still sleeping. So they're rousing them up. Come on, boys, let's get to school. Season 4, the opening scene in every episode was Ward and Jude were on the front stoop of the house, right outside, and out runs the Beaver and Wally, and they have their bag lunches to give them for school. And Ward also hands a jacket to Wally, saying, "Here, you're going to need this. It's going to be chilly." Uh, Season 5, the intro was Jude serves refreshments on the front lawn. The boys are all hanging on the front lawn. What they're doing there, I don't know. Maybe they're cutting the grass, maybe they're just hanging out. I don't know what they're doing in the front lawn. But just like, the housewife of the 50s, Jude came with lemonade and would serve the boys their lemonade right there. In the final season of Leave It to Beaver, the title card was picnic baskets. That they were all running to the car, probably a station wagon. Now, we used to have station wagons when I was a kid. I fondly remember that. It was probably a station wagon. And Jude was holding a picnic basket, and Ward was holding a thermos, and the boys had picnic stuff too. So, yeah. You really wanted to watch it after that. Oh, so here you go. So we know that Leave It to Beaver ended after 6 seasons. But it started to come back. People started to watch the reruns and they liked it. So what happened? TBS got the whole cast together again, and they did a remake called Still the Beaver. Still the Beaver. And 1983. Now, see, I don't remember this very well. Of course, I had MTV back then. That's practically what most people watched back then, MTV. Who was going to watch Still the Beaver? I mean, come on. But there was a show called Still the Beaver, and it ran from 1984 to 1989. And actually, the whole cast came back. But here are the changes. Get this. Ward, the old man, the father, I should call him the old man, the father, he died. I'm sorry to say, I don't know why, but he did. And it was life after him. So I don't think it was a serious show, but it took on more serious topics. But it was still a comedy show. So you had Beaver was getting a divorce. I swear. This sounds like I'm making it up. But I swear to God, this is true. Beaver was getting a divorce. Ward had died. I mean, talk about a comedy show, huh? And Beaver bought the house, the family house, from Jude. And Jude was living there with Beaver and his kids. He had kids. Got a divorce, living there with the kids. So Jude was sort of the living grandmother, you know. And and some other things there. Beaver and Lumpy were accountants. They were accountants. So Beaver actually took up where his father left him. His father was an accountant, the same firm as Fred and Ward. They passed on. So you got Beaver working there as an accountant. Wally, on the other hand, was in the new show. Wally turned out to be an attorney. I could see that. In Wally. Even when he was young, I said, this boy's going to be an attorney someday. Anyway, Eddie Haskell, my favorite. He turned out to be a contractor. He had his own contracting business. And he had a son named Freddie Haskell. And Freddie was not only the spitting image of Eddie Haskell in his younger days, but he had the same personality like the kind of two-facey guy that, the guy you want to punch, but that, so he would remark, even with Mrs. Cleaver, who's like the grandmother now, is like, how are you, Mrs. Cleaver? You look, you look very ravishing today for 95 years old. I threw that part in, but so, and then outside he would say, "Why is she getting old?" Anyway, I threw that in too. The addresses, the real address where the Cleavers lived. They started out at 485 Mapleton Drive, and then they moved during the series. I don't know if you noticed. They moved to 211 Pine Street in Mayfield. But here's the thing. Did you ever watch Marcus F. Welby, MD, with Robert Young? And he made all these house calls. And actually, he had all of his appointments right there in Hope. Right there with James Brawlin was his assistant there too. He was a doctor. That same house was the Beaver's house. Yep, 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 yep. I'm not kidding. Yep. So if you ever watched the Beaver segue, I don't know, is there a way? I mean, we're living in 2024. There's got to be a way that you could put the Beaver's house next to Marcus Welby's house, put them together, compare them, and you'll say, Red was right. Same house. And actually, if you go on at the Universal Studio tours out in Hollywood, you could see that house is still out there. Now, in the lifetime of Leave It to Beaver, there were a couple rumors out there, which I kind of find kind of humorous now. There was a rumor, a very famous rumor. I remember this growing up as a kid, but the beaver was killed in Vietnam. Not a pleasant topic, but not true. You know how that started? There was a guy named Sergeant Stephen Mathers, same last name as Jerry, was actually killed, sad to say, in Vietnam in 1965. Well, what happened was there was a mistake. Either the Associated Press or United Press picked it up. They thought it was the Beaver because of the last name. And they're like, Jerry Mathers was killed, right? Well, what happened was this got on, this was even before social media. Word got around. In fact, it was announced on the Tonight Show that the Beaver was killed in Vietnam. And this got all around until Jerry Mathers himself had an interview with Tom Snyder. Remember Tom Snyder at the Tomorrow Show? This was like early 1972. He went on to do this interview with Tom Snyder, and they talked about it. The Beaver said, I'm here. Gee, I'm here. I'm not dead. I was never even in Vietnam, which is true. He was never there. In fact, the rumor was so prevalent, listen to this, that Tony Dow, his so-called brother in the show, Tony Dow, actually sent bereavement flowers to Jerry Mathers' parents. I just, who knew? But, and I still remember those rumors back in the 70s. I was in high school, and you hear, did you hear the beaver was killed? Anyway, and the other rumor was about Eddie Haskell. There's a lot of rumors about Eddie Haskell. Ken Osmond grew up to be a porn star. Did you remember this? Not true, not true. Can you believe this? This was way before social media. Can you imagine if this happened now? Well, what happened was there was this porn star. I don't know. I might even watch that. Named John Holmes in the 70s. And one of his characters was named Haskell. And they apparently used to name Eddie Haskell in one of his dirty movies. And you know how people mix things up. And people started thinking that was Eddie. because there was a resemblance there. Don't tell me how, but and that's how rumors start. Well, what happened was it ruined Ken Osmond's life. Ken Osmond couldn't go anywhere. People were saying, "Oh, you're the poor guy," and he said, "No, no, no, no." And what happened was he actually sued uh, John Holmes and his movie company $25 million. It went all the way to the California Supreme Court. But guess what? Ken Osmond lost the case. Why? Because the Supreme Court of California ruled that Eddie Haskell, it was just a satire movie, and Eddie Haskell was a character. Eddie Haskell wasn't real. So even though it ruined Ken Osmond's career and he couldn't get work after that, they weren't liable, you know. But Ken Osmond did say, be it and leave it to be. No matter how much he appreciated the role, everybody knew Eddie Haskell. It made him famous, right? It typecast him. Just like Adam West when he played Batman, he couldn't get a job after that because all these other TV shows and movies, they thought that's all he could do was play Batman. And that's what happened to Ken Osmond. All these companies said, give me a break. You're already Eddie Haskell. So, all right, finally, we're going to talk about what happened in life. Characters had? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Barbara Billingsley, she passed away in 2010. She was 94 years old. That's a good long life, huh? The mom. Hugh Beaumont actually died in 1982. That was, before the Still the Beavers, the follow-up show he was. He died at the age of 72. He had a heart attack. He had a son living in Germany. Went over to visit the son. Poor guy had a heart attack in Germany. Died right there. Tony Dow. I think you remember this. Tony Dow just died in 2022. He was 77 years old. And the poor guy died from liver cancer. And I do remember this. His death was misreported. In fact, I remember they said Tony Dow has died. I guess I was watching CNN or something. But then they came back on and said, whoops, we just got a report. Tony Dow is not dead. Tony Dow is very much alive. But he's like hanging on threads. I don't know how they put it. But he wasn't good. He wasn't good. But somehow somebody jumped the gun. And you know how it is, social media. They want to get the story first. So somebody jumped out there and said Tony Dow is dead. Well, he wasn't dead. The man is still living. Give him some credit. But guess what happened? The very next day, yes, officially, Tony Dow died. So there you go. So really, the only one that is Jerry Mathers. Jerry is still living. So what happened is this. Jerry was a very smart guy, but so was his parents. Jerry was actually making $500 an episode in Leave It to Beaver. Now, to us, that's like chump change, right? To me, it's a lot of money still. But back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s, that was a lot of money. What happened? They invested that money for Jerry. When he got to be an adult, he had all this money. And what happened is Jerry Mathers went into real estate. He bought a lot of property and he became this really rich guy. He wrote a memoir, as we all do, eventually, called Ed, starring Jerry Mathers as the Beaver. because that's the way it came out in the front of the show. And it's starring the Beaver. And Jerry Mathers actually became a spokesman for not only diabetes, but he was the first. Here's a little trivia. Jerry Mathers, the Beaver, was the first male spokesman for Jenny Craig, because Beaver had just been hefty, was dead. And Jenny Craig in what was it, 90s, this was coming out. And the Beaver became the first male spokesman, and it worked. He lost a lot of weight. And final thing, Ken Asmund, my favorite, Eddie Hasmund, not a post, not a post. What he was actually was an Allen cop. After the Beaver, AB, after Beaver, Ken Osmond, he couldn't get a job. You know, again, he was typecast. So what did he do? He saw an ad in the LA newspaper, become a cop, and that's what he did. In fact, he became a highway patrolman. He was one of these chips guys. Remember chips? Rode on the motorcycles, caught people and gave tickets, stuff. That was Ken Osmond. I always thought it was Can you imagine? Of course, he grew a beard because he didn't want to be known as Eddie Haskell, giving the people tickets. There's Eddie Haskell. So he actually did. He grew his hair long, grew a beard. He didn't know it was Eddie Haskell. But I always thought it would be funny to be riding in one of those freeways in California, and you're pulled over by Eddie Haskell. And then he says to the guy, "Hey, buddy, what the hell? Why were you driving 95 miles an hour here?" And then he sees the wife, maybe an attractive blonde, and said, "Oh, hello there, Mrs. Smith. How are you? Don't you look lovely to me?" Anyways, actually, Ken Osmond, died not that long ago, 2020, at the age of 76 years old. So, as is really the only cast is other than maybe some friends, maybe Whitey still living, Weasel, or Muskrat, or Chipmunk, whatever. But is the Beaver. And God bless the Beaver. We stay around. All right, my final comments. I like Live the Beaver. You know, if you want to see a good, wholesome family show with a lot of hijinks and shenanigans and carrying it on, look it up. You know, I don't know if some of these channels like BTV or TV Land or whatever are showing me the Beaver. Might be. Or maybe you want to look it up on my favorite channel on YouTube. And look up Leave It to Beaver, because in its time it was a funny show. It really was. And it's starting to get corny lately, you know. It was hard to believe you have this 16-year-old Beaver who's like 5'10" tall, saying, "Yuck, girls are yucky, yuck." Anyway, so well, all right, so that's my classic TV episode of Leave It to Beaver. So I'm going to post this and watch it anytime you want. Share it with your friends. And I hope you like it. So next week we'll do a classic TV show. Who knows what I'm going to pick? That's the fun of it all. You come on, you don't know. You don't know. It could be my mother in the car. Who knows? All right. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a good day. Take peace and love. See you soon.